Okay, so hello. My name is Shannon. I'm the Global Opportunities Coordinator at Goldsmiths. So today I'm just going to go through how you can apply for funding to develop your language skills. We've only got half an hour, so I will whiz through. If you've got any questions, could we please leave those to the end, and then I can answer anything at the end. So just make a note if you think of something as we go along. So here's just an overview of what we are going to be covering today. So I'm just going to go over sort of the two main options of funding that's available. So firstly, language learning from home. So we have this funding for virtual global opportunities, and then language learning abroad. So going abroad to learn a language in another country. I will go over the funding available, I'll go over the application process, and then I've got a slide at the end which covers some placement providers. So these are providers that students have used in the past and have given really good feedback on, both for in-person and online experiences. So to begin, language learning from home. So this is what we call virtual global opportunities. Virtual global opportunities themselves are quite broad, so you can do a language course, but you can also do a summer school, you can do an online internship. There's lots of different things that cover the virtual global opportunities cover. But today, obviously, I'm going to be specifically talking about language learning. So in this context, it's basically an online language course. The two main criteria that the language course must cover is that it has to include live learning or interaction, and it must be delivered by an organisation from outside of the UK. So the live learning or interaction, that essentially is where you're learning in real time. So it shouldn't be a course where you are just absorbing pre-recorded content. It should be somewhere where a course where you have a teacher who's teaching you live. It can be one-to-one. We have funded students in the past to do sort of one-on-one sessions, but ideally it should involve interacting with participants around the world. So we would ideally like you to be in a class where you're interacting with lots of different people to really get that international experience. But the main thing is that it's a live thing, so you're attending a class at a time, and you're participating in live learning, and then must be delivered by an organisation from outside of the UK. So we want students as part of this to get that international experience, and that's also what our funding providers require. So it is important for you to participate in a course that is delivered by an organisation outside of the UK. I've mentioned already, ideally should involve interacting virtually with participants from around the world. So in the past, a lot of students have done language courses where it's delivered by an organisation. I've got a list later that I will show you, and you're in a class. You're basically in a virtual classroom with other students, and you're all learning to get that language together. And it's a very good way to learn. You get to interact with other people. You get people to practice with as well. Then the placement dates, they must take place between the 30th of May and the 23rd of September. The placement can be any length, it just has to take place between those dates. So you can, if you wanted to do a very intense sort of 2-week course where you're learning all day, every day, that's fine. Or if you wanted to do something a little bit more leisurely, where you did a class a week over 12 weeks, for example, that's also fine. It just has to start and finish between the 30th of May and the 23rd of September. Applications open on the 31st of January. and then they close on the final deadline is the 1st of August. So with the online courses, we have a rolling deadline. So there's a deadline on the 1st of each month. So the first deadline would be the 1st of March, and then the 1st of April, 1st of May, etc., etc. And then the 1st of August is the final deadline. And the reason why we do that is because we want to process things quickly. So if you want to do a course in May, you don't have to wait until till mid-August to find out if you've been awarded the funding or not. So we advise students to apply for funding around 2 months before you want to start the course, and that's just so we can go through all of the pre-placement paperwork, and so you can get your funding before you start and before you need to pay for the course. You don't have to, that's just a suggestion. If you need the funding to pay for the course, that's what we advise. So if, for example, you wanted to participate in a course that started in August, it's best to apply by the June deadline for that, and then we let you know 2 weeks after the deadline if you've been successful or not. So the other option is language learning abroad. So this is where you physically go to another country and you participate in a language course in that country. So you go to Paris to learn French, for example. And then the key criteria to be aware of for this is that the placement must be hosted by an organisation. So it must be delivered by an actual organisation, whether it's a university or a language centre or whatever it may be. It can't just be an individual tutor, it needs to be an organisation. And that mainly right now is because the organisation has to have policies in place to manage the risk of COVID. So that's obviously quite a large requirement. And that is one of the ways that we need to mitigate risk on placements abroad, is that the organisation must have policies in place to manage the risk of COVID. So that's social distancing, that's hand sanitizer, that's mask wearing, those kinds of things. The placement must also include a structured programme of activity. So if you're going on a placement to learn French in Paris, it must be you must have a structure, a schedule, a program that you will be following. So it can't be you're there for 3 weeks and have like an hour of French lessons and the rest of the time you do whatever you want. It has to be an actual learning experience. And that's something that we will ask to see as part of the pre-placement paperwork. So the placements can be worldwide, so you're not just restricted to Europe. It can truly be anywhere in the world, and must be less than 2 months in length. So it can be anything from a few days, a week long, to 2 months long. And again, that's up to you, depending on the time you've got, depending on affordability. It's quite flexible. That's really your choice as to what suits you best. And again, the same as the virtual, the placements must take place between the 30th of May and the 23rd of September. And then for these, applications open on the 31st of January as well, but they close on the 1st of April, and that's just one deadline for those. Is the 1st of April. So for the funding, there is up to £500 available for all students. For the virtual opportunities, the funding is only available to cover the cost charged by the opportunity. So if you're doing a language course that costs £300, you'll receive £300 to pay for that course. There's no extra funding for subsistence, for living costs, for accommodation costs, etc., because it's online. So we will pay for the cost of the course of up to £500 for all students. For students who meet the widening participation criteria, that's up to £1,500, and the criteria is listed there. I won't go through everything point by point. You can find it on our website. So if you just go on the Constance website and search for Go Abroad, there's a page that you can see called widening participation criteria, where you can look at this. There's quite a long list, and the idea behind this is to widen access to opportunities and to international experience, and to support those who are underrepresented in those opportunities. So again, for virtual, that we will only pay for the cost of the course. So if you do meet the widening participation criteria and you want to take part in a course that costs £1,300, we can fund that. If you don't meet the widening participation criteria and you want to take part in a course that's £1,300, we can give you £500, but then you would have to pay the rest of the course yourself. If you're going abroad physically and you're doing a placement abroad, if you're actually going to another country and doing the placement abroad, it's slightly different in that we ask you to give an estimate of your costs incurred. So, for example, if you're to use the Paris example again to learn French, we would ask you to on the application to make a note of how much you expect the travel there and back to cost, how much your accommodation will cost, and how much your living costs will be. And we ask you to give a brief overview of that, and then plus if the course that you're taking part in has a cost as well, to include that. And to cite that out. So again, it's up to £500 for all students and up to £1,500 for those who meet the widening participation criteria. If you cite out your costs and you say it's going to be around £1,200, and you do meet the WP criteria, then yes, you can receive that £1,200. So this just kind of again goes over what I just said there, just in brief terms. So for virtual, it's the cost of the course up to £500 for all students, up to £1,500 for WP, and for opportunities abroad. Outline your estimated costs in the application, and then again it's up to £500 for all students, up to £1,500 for WP. And then we pay 80% of the grant up front after you've completed some paperwork, and the paperwork is you need to sign a grant agreement, you need to provide proof that you've signed up for this course and you're doing this course, and there's a few other bits and bobs, and then the final 20% is paid upon completion of your course and of a few final documents that you need to do. So a case study, a survey, and a confirmation of completion. So you need a certificate or an email or something from your placement provider saying yes, the student has completed this course. Yes, so that is how the funding is paid, and this funding is yours to keep. You don't need to pay it back. It's a grant. It's a bursary. It's not a loan. So that is yours. So how to apply? The applications open on the 31st of January for both opportunities, so both online courses and placements abroad. So now is a really, really good time to start researching, to start having a little look online, start thinking about what exactly it is that you want to do, start costing these opportunities out, and budgeting and seeing whether it's more valuable to perhaps do something online or something in person, what works best for you. So again, for the virtual, there's that rolling deadline. So you can start applying for that straight away, and we can process you quickly with that. You're not sitting around for months to wait and see. And then for those placements abroad, that's just the one deadline on the 1st of April. So you can apply in January, you can apply on the first day it's open on the 31st, but you won't hear back until April. And yes, the applications are open to everyone. So regardless of what you're studying, what year you're in, whether you're undergraduate, postgraduate, it doesn't matter. They're open to everybody. The only conditions are that you have to be in good academic standing. So you can't be on academic probation, and you can't be in debt to Goldsmiths. So those are the only two things that we check. There are two routes to apply. So the first one is if you don't meet that widening participation criteria and you're only eligible for the £500, you go via the Goldsmiths form, which will be on our website, where that link is there. And if you do meet the widening participation criteria, you have to go via a slightly different route, which is via Santander. And Santander have their own portal that they would like you to use to apply. Again, the link to that will be on our website. And the only thing to note with the Santander form is that you have to register for their portal before you can access the form. But again, the links will be available, and there'll be instructions on where to go and what one to use for you in your particular circumstances. So that should be clear once opportunities open. So this is a kind of step-by-step of what you should do. So first, find your opportunity. So as I said, now is a really good time to start thinking about what you want to do, when you want to do it, and how much time you can give aside to it. And then apply once those applications open on the 31st of Jan, and then we'll let you know if you've been successful. So applications are competitive, so it's not guaranteed that you will receive funding. It is competitive. So my best advice for that is to really just put some time and thought into the application, and I'll go in a little bit more detail about that in a second. And then if you've been successful, you will complete some paperwork to receive that 80%, that first 80% of funding, and then you're good to go. So in terms of applying and some application tips, the application forms are just personal details, and then there's some questions that are more personal statement style questions. So they ask you to consider your motivations for applying for your specific placement. If you're going abroad, why have you chosen that host country, especially if the language is spoken in multiple countries? Why have you chosen that organisation? So why did you choose that specific placement provider as opposed to a different one? What do you want to achieve, your goals for doing this placement, and then how the placement will help your future studies and career. So the most important thing in your application is to be specific and to answer the questions. So we want to know exactly what your career goals are. So, for example, if you are learning French because you want to work in this specific organisation based in Brussels in the future, that's great. If you want to do a PhD and you want to do some field work in Morocco, so you're learning Moroccan Arabic to support that, that's great. So those kinds of things is what we're looking for. We're looking for you to really explain why you've chosen that placement exactly. So especially if it's in a host country, what drew you to that country? Why do you want to go there? What do you want to get out of this placement? And yes, that host organisation as well, why you've chosen that host organisation. So here we want you to show, we want see that you've done your research. We want to see that you've considered your options and you've made an informed decision about this organisation as opposed to another one. There's some application guidance on our website as well. I think we've got a blog post about it too. So again, if you just go to the Gospels website and search for Go Abroad, you can find all of that stuff there as well. So yeah, here are just a list of placement providers. So these are all ones that students have done in the past. We're not able to recommend specific providers or anything, so I thought I would just compile a list based on what students have completed previously, and list them here. And these are what students have done and have given good feedback on. Some of these have been in person, some of them have been online, some of them have been both. So Alliance Française, many students have done that courses with them online and in person. That's a really big organisation, so there's lots of options there if you're interested in learning French. Same with those two German ones. Again, students have done both of those in person and online. Cervantes for Spanish is online, and then I think all of the rest actually all have been online and in person. The best bit of advice I have around finding a placement provider, I think a good place to start is always universities. So universities in different countries often tend to offer language courses. So if you're not sure, that's quite a good place to start. And they often tend to offer in-person and online options. So yeah, that is one thing that you can have a look at. And generally, students have said that they just have found their opportunities and their placement providers just by looking it up, just by looking online, a Dutch language course or Arabic language course, that kind of thing. I think for language courses, the market is actually probably quite overwhelmed with different providers. So I think regardless of what language you're trying to learn, there should hopefully be different options out there. I think I've listed all of the ones that students have done in the past. I think those are all of the languages students have covered. But yeah, the good place to start is with universities. So I will leave it there for now. If you've got any questions, you can pop them in the chat or you can ask them. Our website is there, so you can have a look online for some more information. And then if you go away and you think of other things, our email address is there as well. But yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Hi, I was just going to ask how many people roughly apply, just so I know what the chances are of getting the funding.
So for virtual last year, I guess virtual, I can't really speak to the Go Abroad's sort of the placements abroad physically, because that hasn't really been a thing for the past 2 years because of COVID. But for virtual last year, I think we had about 60 applications and about 40 students who completed in the end. So that was around the approval rate. We do tend, well, we try to fund, as long as your application is good, you're in with a good chance of being approved. We try to fund as many people as we can. So yeah, that's kind of my best advice, is to really just put some time and effort into the application, and you're in with a decent shot.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, cool. Well, if you do think of anything that you want to ask, you can just email us, and we'll get back to you. But otherwise, thank you for coming, and it was I hope that you'll apply and learn some languages. Yeah, thanks everybody.